Hello, Tim here. Welcome back to another episode. Have you ever come across something that is about to be tossed in a dumpster, piece of furniture, something useful, and you hate to see it be tossed? That was the case when I saw this mirror about to be tossed in a dumpster, and I salvaged it. And I thought, well, someday I'll make a frame for it, but didn't do it for a while. And finally got around to getting some wood, and I'll show you what steps I took to make a frame out of some 2x6s that were left over from another construction project. So the cost of materials is nothing for me at this point, except for the construction material I did buy some time back. But this is all, it's kind of repurposed material and a free mirror that I found. There's mirrors available that aren't that expensive at discount stores or Home Depot or someplace like that. But anyway, in starting this project, I started with 2x6 material. This was sitting around for probably a little over a year, 2 years maybe. Construction lumber is not usually the best for cabinet grade or making things out of a piece of furniture and that kind of thing because of the high moisture content. But if you choose right, and in this case I chose wood that, and you'll see this here, that's vertical grain. And this is more stable than something that's faster growing, as it tends to warp or it can crack. And also I planed it down. So this had a little bit of a hook to it, not much, but I planed it down to 1 1/8". I didn't want it to look so beefy. So when I started, I cut my material a little bit longer than needed. So I had, this is a piece off the length of it. And it also serves having a little extra piece to do your staining practice on it. And we'll talk about that in a minute. I used dowels, and I used marking gauges to mark the joint where I'm going to dowel it. In the picture you'll see 1/2-inch dowel pins that I used, and I chose them for the strength. The rule of thumb in doweling something is that your dowel should be about half the thickness of your wood that you're joining. So if you're joining 3/4 of an inch thick, you'd use a 3/8 dowel. In this case I used a 1/2 inch. It's a little beefier, even though this is a 1 1/8". It worked pretty good. This is a marking gauge. I have several of them. I like to use 2 of them, and one set up for one mark, and then the other set up for the other mark. And anytime you use a marking gauge, make sure that you use the same edge on your piece, that you're guiding from the same outside so that everything lines up. I also used a Doweling jig, and you can still get these. This one I have here is a little bit older, but it works really great. I've used it for many years. And when I put the drill bit in there, I made sure that the drill bit just went a bit over half the length of the dowel. It's like a 2.5-inch length dowel. And you'll see I put tape on the drill bit so that it wouldn't, I could stop it without drilling in too far. I joined it together and glued it up. But I had this piece of furniture that I repurposed, an old Victorian style store fixture. And you'll see in that picture how the stop chamfer was treated. And I like that detail. So I decided I wanted to do that on this mirror. I'm trying to make this look a little bit antique-like. So in doing this here, and you'll see the router bit that I use as a chamfering bit. And doing this here, you got to make sure that you stop at the right point here. And it's really hard to guide your router and make sure you stop to a pencil line, because maybe you don't see it, or maybe you go too far, the router jerks a little bit. You have to make several passes. You can't do it all in one pass or it'll rip out. So you got to go a little bit easy. So I made this chamfer cut in about 4 steps. So that block that I glued in here, I glued in with a paper joint. And in a previous episode, I talk about paper joints and purposes that it serves for holding a workpiece in place while you do something with it. And you'll see how I did that. I glued that in there, and then I sanded it all down flush, and then came along with the router and shaped that. And you'll see how it stopped there. And then I was able to, when that's done, I knocked those corners out and cleaned up the paper off of it. So then the next thing to do is to do the back side. And let's turn this around here so you can see what I've done. So the mirror is a 1/4 inch thick, and it's recessed in a 1/2 inch. So I used some of that leftover lumber that I cut down and made stop molding. This is a 1/4 by 1/4 inch. So I cut that to length, and once this was all finished, I made sure that everything fit the mirror before I did the final cutting, and make sure that you got a little bit of play in the mirror, like 1/8 of an inch or so that it slips in there without being too tight. And then this stop molding I put in after it was all finished. Actually weighed it is about 40 pounds. So I want to be sure something was heavy enough to hold 40 pounds. So this is heavy gauge picture hanging wire. And I put a clamp on here to stretch this to make sure that it was pulled taut, and then I could put this second screw in so that it angled just right. And then I made a hook that I can mount this to the wall and hang this on there securely without fear of it tipping over. A little more unusual tools that I use for putting this stop molding in is a push brad pusher. This one is Spiral Lux. I guess it's made in England. This little round box here has got very small brads. And the idea of this thing here is you got a little brad that load in there like a little cannon. And it's got a magnet there, so it holds the brad in there. And then you can push it in. So I have one little spot left to do here, so I'll show you what I do. So I push this, and I did that all the way around. Now you could use a pneumatic nail gun and pop all that in, be quick about it. The problem with a pneumatic nail gun is what's happened to me in the past. If you get the angle slightly off in doing that, you clip the corner of your mirror and you broke it. And that's happened to me. So this is a little better option, and it's kind of fun to use. The adventure part of this for me, which I was trying to get an antique look to it, and I've had really good success with certain species of wood more than others. But I used something here. You'll see that I used this here, which is wood ash and water. Just went to the fire pit, and it's like mud. And when you put that on the wood, and when I use pine, this part down here is wood ash, and this part here is wood ash. On cherry, it really makes it pop out. It makes it really look antique. Now this darker spot here and on the birch is vinegar, which I've mixed with steel wool. I wrote that on here, steel wool and vinegar. And just regular distilled vinegar, white vinegar, will dissolve steel wool and make a dye out of it. You know, see it there where I use it. Now on the pine, it didn't quite do what I expected it to. It kind of looked more like this. This is a cutting of the long pieces here, and it kind of didn't have the full effect that I wanted. To get the dark color, I have a product called Transfast aniline dye. This is water soluble. You have to mix this up with hot water, and it really penetrates and makes the grain really pop. And I ended up using that to get the final result that I wanted. I was hoping I could get it with the other stuff that I was experimenting with. But to me, this is all part of the fun of doing it. And maybe there's a quicker way you can buy regular oil stains and do it. But I was not really happy with just the look of oil stain. That's what that would have been like on here. So I wanted a little bit more depth of color. Once I got that all done, then I rubbed it down with steel wool, and it ended up making the edges kind of white, and it was a little bit too contrasty. So I ended up going over this with a pigmented oil stain, just to kind of kill that back. Again, what I was trying to achieve is making something new look old. And ideally, it would be nice to get old barn timber or really old wood that you wouldn't have so much trouble with. Just put a natural finish on it. It looks beautiful. But sometimes you can't find what you want, or it's real expensive. Like barn wood nowadays, being as popular as it is real expensive. But anyway, this got where I wanted it to go. And I ended up putting 2 coats of clear coat general finishes varnish on here and rubbed it down. And that's what I did. And that's how I got it wrapped up. And that wraps up another episode. So hopefully you find the journey fun. And if you like what you see here, give it a thumbs up and check out my other videos and subscribe. And we'll see you next time. Thanks for watching.